Welcome everyone. Welcome to our Ginger Desk webinar. This is how to tell if a remote team is right for your clinic. So today, throughout the presentation, I'll be answering questions along with the topics as we go. So for those of you who are attending this presentation live, please let us know in the chat if you have questions as we go. As we're getting started here, also please pop into the chat, let us know where you're calling from, what city. Oh, good, I see folks are starting to mention what city and state or province you're calling from and what your health discipline is. And if you feel so inspired, also let us know if you're a solo practice or if you're a clinic owner, because we always love to know how we can cater our topics to our attendees best. So this is wonderful. Scaling your clinic's admin team can be $1 million decision for your practice if it's done at the right time and if it's done correctly. Knowing how to best leverage your time, your staff's time, even your other practitioners' time, and the skills of a remote team is something that can gain you not only time, but also money and peace of mind, which is my favorite part. So we're going to be talking all things scaling today. And it's critical that you know not just how to scale, but also when the timing is right. And so I'll be talking specifically about some of the constraints that you can recognize in your own practice so that you know exactly when the timing is right for you to scale. We want you to be able to capture opportunities that really maximize your practice's potential. So for those of you here live, please stay right to the end. We'll be opening things up to the Q&A at the end. And I'd love to go through any specific questions that you have at that time. We can talk about your hiring or staffing woes as well, and I can help you troubleshoot how to make things easier for you. So we're going to be keeping this conversation to around 30 minutes today, and then we'll tack on some Q&A at the end. We want you to have lots of time to be able to get back to building and scaling your practice. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk first about the admin burden because it is very real. I'll be going through signs of a clinic's constraint at the front desk. So you can learn to recognize signs at your own front desk or with your own practice that it's time to add more team members to your roster. We'll talk about an admin audit and what it looks like to either supplement your staff or fully replace them and how to do that audit with your team members. We'll talk about departments that can scale most quickly and the benefits of a remote team. And then I'll be going through some real world success stories as well. And like I mentioned, we'll go through a Q&A as well. So let's dive in. A little bit about me before we jump into our topic. My name is Dr. Julie Durnan. I'm the CEO and founder here at Ginger Desk. I'm also a naturopathic physician, and I've been in practice for 18 years now. At Ginger Desk, we're a team of virtual assistants. We're all based in North America, and we are specialized experts in health admin, EMRs, and creating systems to run efficient, organized clinics. We have worked with literally hundreds and hundreds of practitioners over our past several years in business. And aside from running the day-to-day of practices' front desks, we also create practice admin audits. We build out office manuals for clinic owners, and we work really, really well with clinic owners, supplementing their staff where they find that there are situations of constraint. We also work similarly with solo practitioners. What we do for them is we either support them fully, taking on all the admin, or we supplement what they just don't want to do anymore. So for example, they might just send us their emails. Maybe we just handle their invoicing or insurance pre-authorizations. So we live and breathe workflows and efficiency in clinics and solo practices. Now, admin burden, it is real. At Ginger Desk, we get practitioners back to doing what they love, and I know firsthand that that is treating patients. When we asked our community what their biggest challenge is in running a practice, 9 out of 10 clinicians in our community have reported that admin is their biggest burden and pain point. And in fact, we hear stories from current clients of ours all the time, how before they found Ginger Desk, they used to have to book and reschedule patients between their own consults when they had staff turnover at their front desk. They would have to jump in and send out invoices and insurance approvals. they would have to stay long after their day was done or stay up late after they put their children to bed to return emails and voicemails to patients. So we know that admin is a pain. We know that staff turnover is a real problem. And Dan Martell, who wrote the book, Buy Back Your Time, says if you don't have an assistant, then you are the assistant and you come with a lofty price tag and subpar performance. And I love this quote because if you are a clinic owner, this can also apply to your office manager. This goes for them as well. So too often we hear stories about operations managers or clinic operations managers having to step in at the front desk when there are staff turnover issues. So we want you and your management team to be able to focus on the more advanced work that is revenue generating and those profitable strategic projects that you and your manager should be supporting to truly drive revenue and growth in your practice. So let's jump right in here. If you have staff at your front desk, or even if you have a virtual assistant, there are some obvious times that it might be time to add obvious signs that it might be time to add more support for your team. So the four biggest signs that we see here at Ginger Desk that clinics and practices need to add more people to their roster are these: communication breakdown, documents dropped or misplaced, there might be payment problems or errors, and then people. The biggest sign of constraint that we see is that you've either got issues with your admin complaining, your practitioners complaining about the support they're getting, or worse, your patients complaining. So I'm going to jump into these four signs of constraint and explain them more closely. And as I go, please let me know if you've noticed this in your practice, if this is something you've experienced in the past, if you've overcome it in some way. I'd love to hear from you. So number one, let's go into communications because these breakdowns are really problematic and they can lead to not just reputation problems, but also legal disputes. So they are quite critical that we identify them early. So the first one is missed phone calls. If you're getting missed phone calls, so maybe you've got a ton of missed calls that come up on your screen, maybe you have a ton of voicemails. I mean, the worst situation is that you have no voicemails and a ton of missed calls. And so you know that you're missing potentially new patients. If you've got missed calls on your personal cell phone that's clinic related, that's another issue. You also need an assistant if that's the case. That's another webinar that I can cover. But if you've got loads of missed calls at your front desk, this is a really clear sign that you need to look at how you're delegating support and possibly considering needing to add another team member. If you have email delays that go beyond same day, that's another critical warning sign to look at. So here at Ginger Desk, in our accounts and on our accounts department, we often talk to prospective clients of ours, so practitioners all across North America. And so often we'll get an email response back from them, like an autoresponder that says, I'll get back to you in the next 72 hours. And folks, this is not okay. This is a really regular theme that we see come up in the accounts department, that a lot of practitioners are giving themselves grace of 3 business days before getting back to potential clients. And it's because they're just so darn busy. And we know that. But in this day and age, it just isn't reasonable because we're in this day and age of instant messaging. Our patients are paying for private health care and they expect a really high level of service, a fast response time, and in fact, they expect a concierge experience. And I know that we can do better for our patients, and it's just figuring out when and where to add that support that I want to talk about later. So this number 3 should have been probably the top one there, and it should have stars all around it. But when patients express frustration with delays at the front desk, it is a huge red flag. So it can not only ruin your reputation as a practitioner and a business owner, but it can further go viral. So have you ever heard that upset customers are 10 times as likely to tell someone about their experience as a happy one? This is true. And if even one person is upset about the front desk's response time, they can absolutely start sharing that negativity all around your community. If you're in a really close-knit community that relies on a lot of word of mouth, this can just be devastating to your practice because look, the front desk experience certainly reflects on the treatment experience. And so it is really one of the same. It's a patient's first experience with your practice. And so there can be a lot of judgment on the quality of care that they're about to get if there are balls dropped at the front desk. So really, really pay attention. If you have even one complaint from a patient about response time, I invite you to look into those gaps and figure out what's going on. And then clients not being recalled and activated. So if your front desk does not have time to pull reports from your EMR and see who hasn't come in the last 3, 6, or 12 months, and then send them either custom emails or put them on a newsletter list with a certain script or do phone calls for them, then you need to rethink your staffing delineation because your patients should be hearing from you really regularly. If you think about how it's done at a dentist's office, we always get called back in if we cancel our appointment really regularly. They're keeping up on it. And I always say to physios, chiros, naturopathic doctors, mental health practitioners, let's all learn from the dentist. They've got that down. And if you don't have a devoted team to do that, that's something that you can look at so that you can have your current team focusing on what they do best. Now, the next one is that patients don't have a delightful experience upon entering your clinic. So when a patient first walks into your space, if they aren't greeted by somebody at the front desk who looks up and smiles at them and says, welcome, then that's something that you probably want to look at. So you might want to reconfigure how you have your practitioners greeting that patient, or you might want to make sure that your clinic staff has time devoted to actually look away from the computer and to focus on greeting that patient and to make sure that they're having the best possible experience that they can in the clinic. And some ways that I suggest you create that are possibly that front desk person who's there physically can be devoted to that in-person experience. They could be grabbing them a tea. Maybe they're cold. They could be offering them a blanket. They could be walking them to the room. There's so much leverage that you could use that in-person staff for. But if they're stuck on the phone or staring at their computer, figuring out how to submit insurance, then it's likely that you're missing an opportunity to really delight your patients when they're there. Anyone experience this in your clinic? Any of these constraints? I'd love to hear from you. And now the next one is document management. So this might sound like a simple one. Oh, maybe we misplaced a document, no big deal, but it can come out in really severe, have a really severe impact. So one of the biggest problems we see in terms of document mismanagement is intake forms not being completed by patients and not being checked by the front desk. So if your front desk staff is so busy that they don't have time to look a day ahead and make sure that the intake form is completed for a new patient consult, then you know that you need to probably look at filling that gap. We should always have patients arrive with their fully completed intake form so that it saves everybody time and money. I know that practitioners are really frustrated when they've got to then spend 15 minutes reviewing it with the patient out of their treatment. And then patients are also upset that they've wasted time and money that they could have been reminded of before they arrived. There might be a problem with actual document filing in your clinic. So if you've ever noticed that documents are not being filed same day, that's a problem. I expect our bar is high at Ginger Desk, but we certainly expect that as documents are being sent by email or by fax, or even if they're handed to the admin in person, those should be filed appropriately in the patient's chart as they come in. And that might be a referral letter from a physician. Maybe it's a release of records from another practitioner. It could be a legal request. All of those need to be attended to really regularly and filed same day. Now, office manual. This is a big one. And we see a lot of shame in our practitioners around this. So there is no shame. I will say that 95% of the clients that we talk to in our accounts team, they don't have an office manual. So It is not as common as you think to have one, but it is essential. So if you have an awesome front desk team and they are doing their day-to-day work and they are not documenting the systems as they go, and then further not editing their systems as they change them, then you need to add that into their task load. If they're too busy to do it, guess what? You can hire a team to do that for you. But having your systems documented is just business 101, and it makes turnover so much easier in your clinic. It makes scaling so much easier. You can add another location and look, you've already got the playbook for that location. Please let me know in the chat if you have any questions or thoughts around that. Now, payments. So this is the third area that we see a lot of constraints for folks. We see insurance consent forms sometimes gone unsigned. So if you collect insurance in your practice, you need to make sure that your patient has signed a consent form. If it's not automated in your EMR, that they are mandated to sign that in order to move forward, then you need to make sure manually that they're signing that consent. And we've seen this happen multiple times where it's usually fine until that one time when the patient didn't sign the consent form, and it happened to be the one time the admin missed double checking it, and it ends up being a whole battle that could potentially end up in litigation. So you want to make sure that your payments are consented for and that they're done on time. So that leads us to accounts receivable. A lot of folks ask us, what is typical for accounts receivable? And my answer is that you should have your accounts receivable at zero at around 48 hours. So if somebody had a visit yesterday, that should be paid by end of day today. We meet people all the time who have loads and loads of accounts receivable. And look, you're leaving money on the table. And it is so much harder to collect accounts receivable when it's beyond 31 days. So if you can, try to collect it within that 48 hours, even, that's ultimately the best. Definitely collect it within 30 days. If it goes beyond that, it can be so much trouble. And if it is beyond 31 days, that's a really big sign that you just don't have either the right team at the front desk, they maybe aren't equipped to know what to do and how to handle collections, or you just don't have enough human power to actually get the job done. We worked with one clinic where they had literally 3 years of accounts receivable. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars that was left uncollected. And once it goes beyond a tax year, it becomes increasingly difficult to collect it. So this is really critical that you get the process in place and get it organized now so that you can add people and scale it appropriately. And then you might have practitioners in your clinic sending their own payments. And this is something that I see all the time. And it seems like it's a really great business model that you've got this amazing clinic with multiple contractors, independent contractors working there, sending their own payments. But if they're all working out of your EMR and it's under your business umbrella, my business suggestion to you is that you have a dedicated person collecting for everybody, because practitioners are busy and they're devoted mostly to providing excellent patient care. And so having them tack on sending an invoice and making sure it's collected at the end of their consult can lead to a lot of errors. And we've seen that happen so often. So if you are in a position where that's the system you've built, unless they're working from their own EMR and just paying you rent, I would invite you to just reevaluate that situation, see what your error rate is, and then consider where you might have a devoted person handle that. And then reconciliation not being completed at the end of the day. So you should have your accounts reconciled at the end of every single day, without question, every single day. And I have heard horror stories from doctors and practitioners who've worked for certain clinic owners where they weren't doing that. And then the practitioners ended up really suffering because they just didn't get paid for over sometimes years of payments. It's really hard to correct things when it's gone multiple years in arrears. But putting a process in place is quite straightforward. It does take a little bit of time for you to just make sure that that's done with intention. And then going forward, oh my goodness, it will save you so much time to have a simple process of reconcile payments at the end of every day. Do it now, start today. And then insurance billing inaccuracies. So it might be that you've got someone working at your front desk who hates dealing with insurance. And I'm going to talk about doing a staff audit shortly. But if this is the case, this is something, if you're noticing that there's multiple errors in your insurance, it's possible that your staff isn't pleased with being designated to do this task. It's also possible that maybe there's another process along the way that you're missing. So it might be time to reevaluate and consider a different team member to do that job. And now people. So when I say people, I mean that you might have problems with your staff at the front desk. You might have problems with your practitioners, and you might have problems with your patients. So if you hear repeatedly from your practitioners that they're struggling to keep up with their own admin, as a clinic owner, I know that I really take that to heart because it means that there's something that I could be doing better for them. So if they're telling you, I mean, sure, there's always that one clinician who might be sort of disorganized and maybe behind on their admin. But if you've got a big team of clinicians and they're all repeatedly telling you, or multiple of them are repeatedly telling you they're struggling to keep up with their workload, that's something that you should look into for sure, if there's a pattern. And then if you start to see that your front desk is getting burnt out. So signs of burnout at the front desk are people not showing up to work, showing up late, taking more sick days than usual, engaging in gossip, starting to complain about their job to either practitioners or worse to the patients. If you start to see front desk burnout, that's certainly a sign that you should consider replacing the staff or certainly consider supplementing your staff if their workload is too heavy. If you've got repeated turnover at the front desk, you either are too tight with work or maybe you're not managing that team appropriately. Those are the two biggies. Those are the two big reasons. So if it's not your leadership and you think you're a great manager, but the staff keeps turning over, likely consider that you had too much work for them to do and possibly low morale. So that's where we get here. If people are feeling like the culture is sort of dreary and they're not feeling motivated to get the work done, it's often a sign that there's just overwhelm and there's just too much darn work for them to do. And then if patient retention numbers are low. So we often think of patient retention as being a clinician problem, but it is absolutely part of the front desk's responsibility. There's no question. If your patients are dropping off like flies, or they're coming for one visit and not coming back again, certainly look at what you're doing in the treatment room to tell them about the future plan, to talk to them about expectations, to make sure their goals are heard, but also make darn sure that your front desk is recalling them. Make sure that your front desk is greeting them properly if they're there physically. Make sure that you've got the front desk systems in place. And if you don't, it's a big gap that you've got to look into. Now, the impact on patients can be massive. And so here are some of the signs that you might see patient-wise. So you might hear that patients are frustrated over time or money that they've wasted. Patients are very, very sensitive to their experience at your front desk. So, I think we've all had that experience. I'm just going to pick on GPs here for a second. We've all probably had this experience of going into a very, very busy medical doctor's office where the front desk staff just has the phones ringing off the hook. The waiting room is full of very sick people, and the front desk staff cannot look up to greet you, and they are just looking down. And so you might want to get a copy of your lab test. You might be waiting on a rec that your doctor just told you they'd give you. And it is so frustrating to be on that end of it if the admin is too busy to serve you. And so, like I said before, we're in private healthcare. And so our patients have an even higher bar for us than they do in the insurance-based medical field. And so really be sensitive to those patient frustrations at the front desk because they can have just dire consequences on your practice. And now, if there are lost documents or there is a slow response time in critical or more urgent situations, it does reflect as poor care from the practitioner. And this is the most unfortunate thing, is just a disorganized front desk can look like poor medical treatment. So it really is worth looking at your patient's frustrations. Patients might decide to look elsewhere for a new practitioner. Now, we certainly know that if patients are shopping around for a practitioner, just calling clinic to clinic, and they get a voicemail, they certainly might go and just call the next one. If you have a repeat patient, like an existing current client who's not getting answers from your clinic, they might go elsewhere as well, because it's just such a burden for them to constantly be retrying your front desk. And then all of this can have an impact on your reputation from patients spreading bad words about your front desk and your practice online, or just word of mouth from them stopping to, they don't tell their friends and family to come see you, or worse, they tell them not to come see you. There are Facebook groups where things go viral, and it can in the end really impact your bottom line. So the perception of the practice ends up looking unprofessional, unfriendly, disorganized, and that the actual practitioners are not skilled. And I don't think, and I do know that the front desk isn't given as much attention from clinic owners. And I know this firsthand as a clinic owner. I know that we often look at marketing, we look at our KPIs, we look at newsletters, and we look at our treatment programs. We look at everything else that we're doing first in terms of business strategy. And the organization at the front desk is always kind of left to the wayside. It's sort of like, oh, my staff will handle that. But they really do need your support as the business owner, as the brilliant driver of organization in the clinic, for you to come in and lead and direct in terms of how to delineate responsibilities in this department. It can have a massive impact when you delineate properly. So let's talk about that. Now, let's talk about how to audit your team's skills. So if you're frustrated with a certain employee because they're making mistakes, and maybe it's been really frustrating you that they've been dropping the ball, they've misplaced documents, they've mishandled, they're missing phone calls, the gamut of issues at the front desk. If you're really frustrated with them, before you totally fire them, let's just stop there and pause, because I talk to prospective clients at Ginger Desk all the time about this, where they're so frustrated with their team members and they're like, why don't they just know how to do this? They should just know. They should just care more. And the truth is, if they don't have clear expectations of what to follow, it might actually be more of a systems issue than it is a people issue. And so that's for you to kind of audit and figure out. So what I invite you to do is look at your team members and look at, what do they do really well? What do they do kind of adequately? And what do they do poorly? And it might be that they're just exceptional at getting those new patients to book in. It might almost be like they've got so much charisma that they are so great at converting folks to become patients. And so if that's the case, and they're making some issues or doing some mistakes in your insurance, it might be that you've just got them in the wrong seat. And then next, ask them, what do you absolutely love doing? This is so enlightening for a ton of practitioners that we talk to. 9 times out of 10, what they hate doing, I'll just tell everyone, is they hate the billing and the insurance and the faxing. It's like the document organizing is often not where in-person clinic staff thrives. So often they joined your clinic because they love talking to patients and they love talking to the practitioners. And so instead of just assuming that that's where they thrive, why not ask them? If they love the behind the scenes insurance aspect, awesome. Keep them there. And now you know you need to hire in the area of communication. So can't hurt. You can first assess where they thrive, and then next just have that conversation and ask them. And ask yourself, will this person thrive with me over the next year where I need them to? Because you might have plans for your clinic. Maybe you've got a plan to add a second location. Does this person have the chops to grow with you? And I think this is the hard part that we as business owners sometimes don't want to admit, that possibly this person that started with us that seemed so perfect for that role just isn't the right person moving forward. And maybe something in their personal life has changed. Maybe they just haven't been growing with your clinic. Maybe there is a culture dynamic issue, but really ask yourself. And if you think this is the person, they can do it, I want to grow with them, they stay. Now we just need to figure out which seat we want to keep them in. And if it's a no, if they are truly just not that person that's going to be here in a year, it's time to have that tough conversation internally with yourself that maybe this is just time to say goodbye to them. And that's where you might consider fully replacing them with an outside hire or with a remote team member. So when you're looking at whether you supplement or whether you replace, there are systems specifically that I want you to look at. So I like to divide clinics into 5 departments. 1, communications, 2, payments, 3, documents, 4, labs for those of us who deal with labs. So if you're a functional medical doctor, naturopathic physician, a nutritionist, or even chiropractors who use labs, then you might have this 4th lab department. If not, you can ignore it. And the 5th is projects. So let's start with number 1, communications. This department is your email, text, also your EMR portal, and your phone. So you want to think of this as this is your front face to your patients. So you want to have someone with charisma who loves talking to people. This is the person you want in this department. And if you don't have that staff on hand, you need to keep them in the back end and you need to hire for this. Now, number 2 is payments. So this might be accepting cash payments, doing in Canada, maybe doing direct insurance billing. If you're in the US, it might be doing pre-authorization, sending super bills, and then doing that end of day reconciliation and then liaising with your bookkeeper. So this is a skill set. Like people who love numbers truly thrive in that area. And so you really want to delineate your people in terms of these departments. Now, the 3rd department is documents. So this is where, again, when you ask your team, what do you love doing? Documents are often not their favorite. So this involves filing. So getting documents from the fax machine or from email and making sure it goes in the patient's chart, file name is appropriate every single time. This might be release of records, legal referrals, etc. But document handling can be its own thing and its own department. And then labs. So for those of us who prescribe labs, you know that this is a really big job. And there is a whole workflow that is associated with prescribing labs to a patient. So you need to first write the requisition, collect payment from the patient. We now need to keep a tracker of which labs are outstanding. We probably need to explain instructions on how to do the collection. It might be go to this place for phlebotomy, or maybe you're drop shipping a lab kit to them. And then we want to, when we get the results in, we want to attach them to the patient's chart, ping the patient. There really is a whole workflow. And so I often see practitioners prescribing labs getting frustrated that the front desk didn't know what to do. Well, it's because it's a system. And so you really want to have one system and one person accountable to that so that you know if something goes wrong, you go to that person specifically and make sure that they can correct it. And then the 5th one, I just have to move my chat here, are projects. So this might not be something that your staff is doing day to day, but you want to look at this department in terms of what are the projects monthly that I want done in my clinic. So the projects that I suggest you consider are getting an office manual, either started or updated, making sure that you've got a system for client recalls where you're regularly calling back patients who haven't been in 3, 6, or 12 months, and then possibly KPI tracking. So this might be, and those are key performance indicators. So you might be tracking the number of new patients that come through, the retention rate of your clinicians. There could be multiple KPIs that you're going to be monitoring, but having someone go in and pull that data for you and entering it in a spreadsheet is a project that they could do either once a week or once a month. And it's just so valuable. So any questions about that? Does anyone have any questions? And then I'll move on. Great. So here is a real life case study. This is a story about John, who is an integrative health practitioner. He's a real client of ours, his name has been changed, who is a physiotherapist. And John has 300 patients a week coming through his clinic. he came to us with an incredibly high team turnover. So what I mean by that is he literally had 5 different front desk staff hired and trained and quit in a 6-month span. So that's a lot for a clinic owner to manage. It's a complete headache. I know firsthand how hard that is. And that's when he came to us. His accounts receivable at that time was 4 months past due. So that was like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars left on the table. His patient response time was about 2 business days for just simple booking requests. His front desk staff that he did have that didn't quit, they were completely overwhelmed by patient calls while also trying to do the billing and catch up on past due stuff. Patients were complaining and they were leaving the practice. And so revenue started dropping. So what did we do with John? We offered John a dedicated Ginger Desk billing assistant. So we inserted Ginger Desk just to handle the payment side of his company. We had John realign his current staff with clear delineation of responsibilities. So staff 1 that was still there handled all the phone calls and all the document filing. He had staff 2 handle all the emails, texts, and portal messages and greeted people in person. So they were super busy just doing that, and they were solely accountable now to doing that. And then Ginger Desk handled the rest. So John happens to be in the US, so we handled all the insurance pre-authorizations and we did all the cash invoicing. And then the front desk staff now that was there in person didn't have to handle any of the billing at all. We then went in and collected all the accounts receivable that were past due as well, and we're now up to date. This freed up the front desk staff to then engage with patients in real time. They could actually look away from their computers and they can create that concierge experience in John's reception area. So the result of this is that patients were delighted. The clinicians were delighted because revenue has come up 20% just in the first month of John implementing Ginger Desk. John's profitability has since increased by 20% now, since we caught up on the AR and we added those efficiencies in terms of the task delineation at the front desk. The patient's response rate went to 4 hours from 2 full business days. So patients are hearing back within 4 hours now. And accounts receivable is now down to 24 hours at 0. They are now cash flow positive, which is so wonderful. So the update today is that John now has a very happy team and happy patients. John is now opening his 2nd location because he can see how easily this is scaled. And his Ginger Desk billing team will now be supporting his 2nd location as well. So why a remote team? Now, for clinic owners, you can either supplement your staff with a remote team or you can replace your full staff. We support loads of clinics where we are it. They have a simple sign at the front desk and everything is handled remotely beautifully. So there are 2 different options. For solo practitioners, we can either do all of it to free up your time and drive more revenue, or we can just do certain aspects. Wherever you are ready, we will meet you there. Now, I'm excited to mention the newest addition to our products here at Ginger Desk. This is one of my favorite movies from last year. Here is Ken walking in like Ginger Phone. He is your virtual receptionist stepping in to handle all your new patient bookings. So Ginger Phone is our latest product. We are so excited to announce that we have just launched literally today with our first clients. Ginger Phone is a devoted team of virtual receptionists here at Ginger Desk who answer every single call for your practice as it comes in. So you simply forward your number to us. We handle every single call. We log into your EMR and we do simple payments. We do all your bookings and we can offer practice information as well. The best part about Ginger Phone is that we integrate beautifully with your Ginger Desk virtual assistant. So we'll communicate directly with either your front desk staff or your Ginger Desk VA. Packages for virtual assistants start at $5.99 for new grads or back to practice parents. We base our monthly membership plans on your task volume and your practice volume, and we are accessible and affordable from small scale clinics and solo practitioners all the way up to multi-practitioner clinics like John's who have multiple locations. So the take-home messages from today are that admin burden is real on you and your practice. You can look for signs of constraint around your clinic and around your front desk and make sure to address them right away. You can audit your team to see where they're happy and where they serve you best. And then you can scale your team by department rather than by person. And then, of course, Ginger Desk is here to upgrade your admin. Thank you from all of us. We are here creating admin freedom for health practitioners. For any questions, you can email us at hello@gingerdesk.com. To book in with our accounts team for a custom quote on your practice, please visit our website at gingerdesk.com, and we can't wait to meet you. Now, I'd love to open this up to questions. Great. Any questions, folks? Oh, good. We've got our team answering some things in the chat. That's wonderful. Great. Thanks for joining, everyone. It was so wonderful to see you. Again, the link is gingerdesk.com, and you can email our team directly at hello@gingerdesk.com. Thanks.